Hey, Chris, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, give us a little background on yourself.
Yeah, great. Thank you. And really humbled to be here. So happy Friday. Been in sales 20 some years in various med device companies and a lot of startup companies, which is fun to be a part of. It's always fun to build something from nothing, so to speak. And it's always a challenging environment. So now I'm in a leadership role here with a startup based in Silicon Valley called Cerebel.
So you chose med device because it was easy?
Hmm. I my background, I'm actually an English major, but I always had aspirations to go into sales, particularly med device. And I figured if I could hopefully communicate somewhat effectively and read effectively, that would translate into sales. No, I thought med device was pretty challenging. It sounded really cool being able to interface with physicians and nurses. And so, um, you know, work my way through various channels to get my first little entry device job, and then just took it from there.
Well, most English majors go into education, don't they? Isn't that the
Yeah,
desire? Yeah.
yeah. My father ran an English department for 45 years in
Oh,
high
I see.
school. So yeah,
Yeah.
so that kind of rubbed off on me with the reading and the writing. But I didn't necessarily do well in math. And so I figured business, maybe not so much. Sales, though, I really enjoyed, you know, interacting with people, having high level conversations. And so just seemed like a natural fit.
And I got to imagine that first year was hard. No.
Yeah. So my first opportunity in college, I was actually given an offer to sell life insurance. And candidly, yeah, fun stuff. Candidly, I reviewed the information, tried to take the test, didn't pass multiple times, and I think part of it was I really did not enjoy the material that I was
Yeah.
reading. So that told me something. But I had worked all throughout college, bartending and um, waiting tables, so kind of took my tail between my legs and came back home, lived at home with my parents. Thankful, have a really good relationship with my parents. But I bartended and waited tables 6 days a week for a year and a half. Made great money.
Yeah.
Developed really good interpersonal communication skills there. But I got to the point where I was kind of thinking I need to get my act together here.
Yeah.
And essentially, anyone that I connected with, I had a resume on me, and I would just give it out talking to people. And ironically enough, a young gentleman who ran uh, the delivery service for this little X-ray supplier sat down at the bar. We started talking, and he said, "Hey, my boss is actually looking to hire his first salesperson," and had a resume on me and gave it to him, and went from there.
And why
My
startups for
man.
you? Just
What's that?
why startups though? I got to imagine startups in med device pretty hard.
Yeah, I think, the cool thing about startups is, especially when you get in early, you got to figure it out. There's no playbook.
Yeah.
And that appeals to me, trying to figure stuff out and listening to the clinicians. They basically can tell you how to position and market the product better than a lot of times than the actual company itself, right? And so I feel that that's a really unique aspect with med device startups. And the ones that I've had the privilege to be associated with, candidly, all of their products have become standard of care. I'm not really good at a lot of things. I'm good at picking two things. Wives, I'm still on my first one. Kim, who I'm happily married, 22 years because I'm always wrong, and companies, the med device companies. And so even though it's hard, even though it's challenging, building something from nothing, I think it's that much more gratifying
Yeah.
when you're watching your product truly change the way care is being provided, and you actually had something to do with that, not only with a patient, not only within a hospital, but then within an entire health system. That's a big rush, to
It
know that
is.
you
Yeah.
have that impact.
How about the learning curve, though? You didn't, you weren't a biology major, you didn't work in a lab, but you're selling to the smartest people, most educated people, people whose time is most valuable, and who probably talking to a salesperson isn't top of the list. You're not paying, and
Yeah.
you're taking their time.
Yeah, good point. It's an interesting dynamic, I think, and you're right, because I didn't do well in biology at all. So, how the heck do you do it? I think again, it's going in and being able to have conversations that, hey, can you tell me how you think this can make a difference as it relates to the way you handle your patient? Look, you're the doctor. I'm a dummy here. Could you teach me? Could you tell me how you think? This is what I'm hearing, but it, can you confirm that, or where else do you think this could be applied? And you know, physicians, nurses, they're naturally curious in nature, and they like to be consulted, and they like to
Yeah.
be thought partners. And so listening to them and getting their feedback, basically then what do? They start selling themselves as to where they could see this being a fit. You know, I could actually see, now that I think about it, this would work well here for this patient. Huh. That's a great point. Well, what do you think? Would you like to try it? You tell me. And then they're kind of selling you on it. I think it all comes down to listening and asking them, versus telling. That's what it comes down to.
Because most people tell. They're trying to show how amazing the device is.
Yeah, for
And
sure. Go ahead.
and
Sorry.
and they're I can't imagine doing that to a doctor and the doctor rolls their eyes and they go, I've been doing this a long time. I know what I'm doing. Who are you?
Yeah.
Getting defensive instead of open. I like how you asking their advice.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I really meant that. They ironically enough, clinicians are the best salespeople for your product, especially if you're asking them, right? They will tell you how you can position the device, and how it, most importantly, can impact patient care. So, uh, to be to be fair, I was mostly telling early on, right? And while I was fortunate to have some success, not nearly, the type of success that I've been fortunate to have later on. And I think it was a result of just, like you said, telling versus asking, you
Yeah.
know, and you just learn by experience, getting your tail kicked in after years. And then, like, oh, wait a minute, it's not all about me. Uh, Tell me about you, duh. So sales
Well,
one.
some people never get that. Most A lot of people feel uncomfortable not talking about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's just based on experience. The longer I go, the more I listen. Well, I'm more comfortable in my skin. Um, I know what I know what I am, and I know what I'm not. And I firmly believe that your customer, whether it's a doctor or a nurse or anyone, that they can tell you more about your product many times than you can. It's just asking questions.
And is the hardest part getting that appointment, getting their time, getting their attention?
Yeah, I remember cold calling for me initially was the hardest part of my job. I remember at that little X-ray distributor, it was called Alpha X-ray. The my boss, the owner, said, he gave me a crate of pamphlets and said, well, here are your products. Go figure it out. And by the way, you have no existing accounts. So I had to learn how to develop a territory, market to a territory. And it was banging on doors, little medical offices. And I'll tell you, there were some times where I was sitting in my little Honda Civic and I was crying. I was like, this sucks. Like,
You would drop it in.
yeah, and you're cold calling in front of an office where there's 15 patients waiting that are ticked off because they're, behind schedule, and there you are talking to the office person. And so, that's humbling. And then again, as you go through that experience, then you start to gain, some little wins here and there. I don't want to say it becomes a game, but you almost start to thrive on that. And then how can I look at Brian and within 10 seconds change the way he is or she is looking at me? That's a cool challenge. And so ironically, over the years, the cold calling has become the favorite part of sales for me. And it's easier now than it was then.
Because you turn it into a game, a challenge,
Yeah, I think it's just, again, how do you feel comfortable, right? So I'm very comfortable making fun of myself. I've got a lot of material to work with, so that helps. But you see someone you're walking up to, and they're really, they just got a scowl on their face, and then they say, "Can I help you?" And I just look at them and say, "Well, how much time do you have?" I got issues, like, and I look at the watch, and then just like that, though, how can you break the ice? And
yes.
I appreciate watching someone. It's self-centered a little because I just made you laugh. That just made me feel good. And I think you legitimately laughed at that. Right.
I did.
So yeah. And that's fun. Like that makes me feel good that I just made you feel good right there. Right. So it's a little bit of a philosophy that I have. It's called give, give, get. Right. So give twice before you try and get something.
Yeah.
And, I've tried to maintain that philosophy, and I believe that it's helped.
Well, it's the law of reciprocation, and everyone tends to have it backwards. They're more than happy to give once they've received,
Right.
but it doesn't work that way,
No, it doesn't, especially when you're
unfortunately.
going cold. Yeah. So, and I think, it's just when you mentioned on the cold calling, it's just fun to be able to walk into an environment where you're not supposed to be there. You're walking into an ICU, or you're walking into an ED, and, you've got this trauma victim over here and a stretcher yelling and screaming, and you've got this, and you got to walk right up to Brian and just be able to say, "Hey, my name is da da da. I'm going through this, I'm going through that." How do you break the ice in that 30 seconds to a minute? And that's a fun challenge,
Yeah, it's tough. Now, the bartending, I'm sure that must have helped.
No doubt. Yeah, good point. I will tell you that anyone that wants to get into sales, I don't care what type of sales, I think working in the restaurant industry is a phenomenal way to cut your teeth, right?
Yep.
So, bartending, waiting, at the end of the day, you got to get people on your team, right? And you're going to be dealing with people that are really needy and a lot of times want to drink because they're angry. Something hasn't gone right. And how do you win someone over? And dealing with a lot of challenging situations, customer related, I think absolutely helped me as a foundation to be able to go into sales.
And what kept you in med device? Was it just home, or was there you develop a passion for medicine? Did the challenge or
Yeah.
the money?
Uh, I do appreciate the fact that we're dealing with, like you said, highly intelligent people. I work a lot with neurosurgeons, and I often say the only difference between God and a neurosurgeon is God is not a neurosurgeon, right? And so, do I enjoy the anatomy? Not particularly. I enjoy being able to impact patient care as a result of the neurosurgeon, you know, listening to me. What I find really cool is, holy cow, this brain surgeon, she or he, is actually listening to me during this procedure. And in some small way, I'm guiding them, as it relates to how they're utilizing the device. That I find really cool. That's the thing that gets me going. The other thing is, if you're literally in the case, when do you pick the time to actually have some type of conversation? Because if it's brain surgery, there's a lot of tense moments, right? So being able to pick and choose, feeling the reading the room, right, and when to be able to talk or not, that gets me going, and that gets me um,
Yeah.
excited, and I think that's why it's med device for me, sales, and fortunately, back to the companies, I've just been very fortunate to pick the right companies, the right technologies, and they fundamentally are making a difference in care for patients, that there is no standard of care other than just status quo. And I think that's been a big reason why I've stayed in med device.
Well, picking the right company is critical because I got to imagine, like any category, there's typically three. It always gets boiled down to like three companies in each category. And if you're going after startups, it's probably starts at 15.
Right.
How do you decide which of the 15 is going to be the one that that's going to grab your attention and is going to go somewhere?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that question. So I'll answer it long-winded. At my current company, we have a very laborious interviewing process. And it's based on what I have done to make sure that I'm picking the right company. Not only that they're right for me, but I'm right for them, right? If it's successful, it's a marriage. So how do you do that? How do you pick the right company? And in our interviewing process, we have the candidates literally go out and cold call into respective hospitals and find out about Cerebell, which is our product. Find out about the company, and we have a rapid EEG system, but find out about the market. Find out if what we're saying is legitimate, because I'm a salesperson. So I wouldn't necessarily take my word for it, even though what I'm telling you is factual. Find
Right.
out for yourself, do your own due diligence. And so find out about the market potential, talk to your end users, find out if there's really a clinical need. And then if someone's utilizing the product, find out how they feel about it. That way you can make the best informed decision for you and your family. And so I've taken that approach with all these respective companies that I've picked. And it's allowed me, as a result of doing a ton of due diligence, talking to the end users, what their thoughts are on the market, it's allowed me, and again, knock wood, I hit my head as I say that, but it's allowed me to make the right decisions, picking the right companies.
And your track record is very impressive. How do you keep that consistency? Because most sales reps, if they're at a good company or good territory, they do well. But then there's usually a lump or a hole, and then they're looking for something that's very similar.
Yeah.
Yours has been
Well,
very consistent.
I appreciate that. I'm planning on stopping after this one, Brian, so I don't screw anything
Your
up,
track
right?
record is clean.
Yeah, try to, but and the jury's still out here. Who knows? It could go sideways. But I'm fortunate to pick the right companies that allows me to be passionate. Right, that's number one. Number two, I'm not a workaholic, but I am a good worker. I think, and especially as I get older, and my skill sets have developed a little bit more. I'm more comfortable in my skin. I feel like if I don't work hard or harder than I did in my last company, I'm shame on me because I've got more to be able to leverage in the field every day. And I think the other thing is I have high expectations that now, to your point, the track record, anything less than what I've done for me is a loss. It's failing. So try and hold myself to a high standard, which
But
requires a lot of work.
everyone kind of says that, but you did it. Very big difference. But to have repeated consistency year after year, because the company works against you, the comp plan works against you, right? They up the quota, they reduce the territory, and it's harder to be successful. How have you, what skills, what techniques, what talents have you worked on that kind of keep you going?
Yeah. Well, I'm a kind of a collective effort. So to be clear, I have been very fortunate at every company that I've been at to have really special mentors and leaders. So I mean that sincerely. I've just been very fortunate to have people that have inspired me to help me do well. And I've been lucky in that respect. So I think that helps every time you transition to another company. You have someone that's better than you, multiple people that are better than you. I always try at every company I go to, who's the top person? Who are the top people in the organization? I'm the the least sharpest tool in the shed. I need to go and latch on to these people. I need to invest and try and show value also to these people so they'll want to invest in me. So that's something that I do, Brian. I always try and gravitate to who are the top people in the organization that I can learn from. And I'm always the I'm always in the training class. I'm always the worst in the training class because it just takes me longer to learn. But after the training class, that's when the rubber kind of meets the road. And then what do you do after that? And so I think that's where I do well, not in that initial training because I'm fairly dense, but after that training, which is who am I going to lean into and really learn from so I can take best practices. I think that's been a big reason why I've been fortunate to continue to have some success continually.
So you haven't rested on your laurels and you haven't been the person since you had success at one company. Sometimes it transfers, sometimes it doesn't, because there's a different problem set. I think the modeling of the best people is good. Well, what makes a great med device salesperson? Because now you're in leadership and you've got to go pick them.
Yeah. Uh, Man, so we actually have my team and I, because we have such a unique product culture and company where we're at now, it really requires a certain personality type coupled with a certain skill set. And we had a workshop on it and we literally developed a hiring playbook for that, really encapsulating what are the top attributes. And the first thing I think for a top salesperson, they got to be a grinder. You got to be in the field every day and in device. It's the big thing. You got to have a personality, but you have to have humble confidence and transparency. So at our company, we look for people that, yes, they carry a presence, but they know themselves well enough to say, I don't know this. You know this. I want to learn from you. So we're looking for that, humble confidence, transparency, and people that are just willing to unequivocally put blinders on and just say, I'm all in. I'm all in every day. And we don't ask people more than, than we would ask of ourselves. I think those are the top things that we look for in our people, that we bring over here.
And what have you done to prevent burnout? Because working at this level of intensity for a long period of time, and you've had long runs at companies. A lot
Yeah.
of people do 2, 3 years. You've been very consistent through it. And it's easy to get burnt out, and it's such a high resistance sales world.
Yeah. It's a good question.
Does it
I,
go back to bartending? Or
yeah, right. No, no. I mean, it's a fair question. It's what do you do here? We're very sensitive to, we hire adults here, right? So we don't hire, we're not babysitters. So we're not micromanagers. We're hiring people that are high performers where we're leading by example and we're coaching. And that way people have a level of autonomy that allows them to feel that they're not being under a thumb. And I think that a byproduct of that is lack of burnout, allowing someone to feel like, hey, this is my franchise. This is my gig. I've got someone alongside me here that's going to guide me, coach me, but this is my business, if you will. And I think that's important, especially when you're in a super high growth startup like ours, to allow people to feel like they can fail and make decisions on their own, but also know you're walking right alongside them. So I think that's one thing. I think the second thing is when people need time, man, give them time. Like for me, when I'm off, I'm off. Like I don't bring my phone upstairs.
yeah.
I mean, and we're a West Coast company. I leave it there. My boss, who's my CEO, she's exceptional like that. You got to be cognizant of people's personal lives. I personally never send an email. I work on weekends, but I keep my emails in drafts. So I don't send them on the weekend. They might go out at 4:30 in the morning on Monday, but I wait. I think that's an important thing. That's how we're knock wood. We haven't seen high turnover of the people that are the people we want to stay here.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, I really enjoyed this conversation, Chris. Where can people go to connect and follow you?
On LinkedIn.
That's the place to
Where you
find you.
found me. Yeah, that's great. LinkedIn's fine. So